Welcome back to another Q&A session. Today we are covering a question about somebody sent in a question saying that their partner is gossiping about them, which is no fun. So we're going to dive right in. The question, I'm just going to read the question so there's context for the rest of the conversation here. The question says, I've overheard and seen my spouse not having my back, choosing others over me, making fun of me, and not really being my friend or putting me first. It seems that my partner is more emotionally connected to friends, kids, and siblings than me. We have lost a connection of trust and probably even interest in each other. I'm embarrassed and I'm hurt. How do I put myself out there emotionally, knowing that I might get burned? So there's a lot to unpack in this question. And I'm really excited to dive into some practical solutions. We're going to be focusing on things that you can do other than waiting for your partner to apologize or waiting for them to change to hopefully enhance and improve the relationship. And I'm all about making sure that we're talking about things that empower you and that don't make you the victim of circumstance. So just keep that in mind as we go through here. And if this question is something that you're interested in, or if you enjoyed this video, I just want to encourage you to hit the subscribe button really quick. Do something good for your marriage. I'm constantly putting amazing videos out to the sole purpose is to help you get the tools and resources you need to have a great relationship. And if that's of interest to you, this is a channel you want to subscribe to. And also, if you enjoy anything along the way throughout this conversation, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. I always love hearing your thoughts and experiences as I go through all this stuff. So a little bit of context before we dive into answering this question. So this channel is called The Growth Marriage, and I called it that for a reason. There's this man named David Schnarch. He's a researcher, a therapist, and one of my favorite quotes of his is he says that marriage is the ultimate human growth machine. And I am a firm believer in that. I think that when you're in a relationship with somebody, you get exposed to opportunities to grow up, to mature, to become a better version of yourself. More than any other, like if you were on your own, you would never get these opportunities. So being in a relationship with somebody gives you opportunities to grow and to grow up in a way that you would never experience otherwise. And I respect people who get put into a situation like this where their partner is doing things that are hurtful. They're going through a rough patch. Things aren't the way they want them to be. And rather than just like bouncing out of the relationship and saying, this isn't for me, see you later, they first are willing to put their relationship to the test and see if there's something that they can learn or do to outgrow the problem. So I want to give the person who sent this question in kudos for not just saying like, hey, my husband's not respecting me. He's being cruel. He's not being kind. I'm out of here. Let's see if we can figure out how to make things better first. And then let's make the decision if things don't change of whether or not we want to leave. Another reason that The Growth Marriage is the name of this channel is that I love the analogies that we can pull from nature to help us strengthen our relationships. So that's where I want to kick things off today is by sharing an analogy with you, and that's going to go into the rest of how I answer this question. So I want you to imagine for a moment that your relationship is a tree, like a big oak tree in the middle of the forest. And the strength of that tree, it begins down, let's see if I can, down in the roots. These are the roots down here. If the roots are strong and they grow deep and you have a really great root system, that tree is going to be able to weather the storms of life, and it's going to be able to get that tree plenty of water and nutrients to keep the tree healthy and strong over the tree's entire lifespan. If the roots grow weak or if they have a problem, then the tree's in trouble. The tree stops getting the nutrients it needs. It becomes weak. It might be prone to fall over or just die standing up. And that's something that we don't want for the tree, or in this situation, our relationship. So we don't want our relationship to become vulnerable. And that means we need to focus on keeping the roots of our tree strong. Now, the roots in your relationship are your friendship. So this comes from Dr. John Gottman's research and the book, The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work. They talk a lot about the foundation of the sound relationship house is friendship. But we're going to go with the tree analogy here and say that the roots of your relationship are your friendship. And those roots are meant to keep your marriage strong, to keep it stable, to keep it nourished. And those roots, there's like 3 main root systems. And those 3 main root systems are, I know you, I like you, and I trust you. I know you, I like you, and I have your back. And when one of those roots starts to wither, starts to degrade or become unhealthy, it takes a huge toll on your relationship. Your communication shuts down, and you're going to see some really negative side effects. And in this case, in the case of this specific question, when a partner is gossiping and spreading, like making fun of if a husband is making fun of his wife behind her back, this is a big breach of trust. This immediately, like the direct impact is on one out of the foundational fundamental roots that is meant to keep your marriage strong and stable. And it's the trust element. It's a betrayal of trust. And for some people, this is going to hurt worse than others. For some people, this could be devastating. For others, it could be a mild speed bump. But it is something that needs to be addressed. And if gone unaddressed, it can definitely eat at your relationship and over time, end it. It can kill it. So let's talk about quickly some signs that your I trust you root might be weak. And this will go beyond just this specific situation. I just want to call attention to maybe some signals if you're watching in this specific situation of having your partner talk behind your back doesn't pertain to you. These are some other symptoms that you can watch for. So if you say things like, if I don't do it, it won't get done, there's a trust problem in your relationship. You can't rely on the other person. If you or your partner are emotional time bombs waiting to go off, if you can't share hard truths with each other because you're both hypersensitive, you'll get defensive or angry, critical of each other, that's a problem. So if you, let's see, if promises don't carry any weight anymore, so if your partner makes a promise and you're like, okay, that's 50-50 chance that'll happen, that's a problem. That's a trust issue. If you're feeling lonely in your relationship, oftentimes it's due to a trust issue. If you feel a lack of respect from your partner, which I think this specific symptom is one of the things that's being manifest in this example of your partner talking behind your back, there's a lack of respect. That's a trust issue. If your partner doesn't respond to or completely ignores your efforts to connect with them, or vice versa, if you ignore your partner's attempts to connect with you, that's a trust issue. And if there's a lack of shared laughter, of shared joy in your relationship, there's probably an underlying trust issue. So those are some of the signs that you might be struggling with trust issues. And so now that we kind of have identified why this problem is, or why this situation outlined by this reader is so particularly dangerous, let's dive into some things that you could do to maybe fix it. So the first thing that I would recommend is I think it's important to have a clear way, and this doesn't even need to be shared with your partner, though it might be helpful if it is shared with your partner. But the question I would ask you is, how do you air your grievances in your relationship? What are the things that let me just move my microphone here. What are when you get your feelings hurt, how do you communicate that to your partner? Do you have a system in place? Is there a phrase that you use? Is there like a time that you have scheduled where you can talk about the issues that come up in your relationship? And if the answer is no, then that's something that I would invite you to consider developing in your relationship. When your partner, I love, one of my favorite relationship experts is Laura Doyle. She wrote a book called The Surrendered Wife. She's written several others. She's a great human. And one of the things that she teaches women to do when their partner says or does something that hurts their feelings is merely look at them and say the word ouch. Ouch. It's just an acknowledgement that the thing that just happened hurt. And you don't need I think the tendency that most human beings have when they get hurt by somebody that they love is to get angry, get upset, get frustrated, to let your partner know in no uncertain terms and oftentimes in an escalated voice all the ways that they hurt you and the things that they did wrong to make you miserable and unhappy in your relationship. And when we dump emotionally on our partners like that, it's not productive. It doesn't result in rarely do we sit down and tell our partner, these are all the things that you've done that hurt me, and these are all the ways I think you're defective. And then our partner goes, oh, wow, thank you for telling me all those things. Can we do this again tomorrow? And you could tell me more about the things that I need to fix and the ways in which I'm defective and ruining our relationship. That's not a normal human reaction. It doesn't happen very often that way. And so approaching it from that perspective is going to be less effective than maybe creating a strategy of how can I gently bring this up in a way that you can hear me, but also in a way that gets my point across. And so that's where I would start, is develop a system in your relationship or in your life where you can communicate those hurts so that your partner is clear that they've done something that's not appropriate, that's not okay, but that doesn't drag them through the mud and make them feel like they need to get defensive and protect themselves and maybe even attack back in the relationship, because that's not productive. One of the greatest tools, and I've done a video on this, I'll link to it maybe up here in a card. Right, I don't know, right here, I think is where it shows up. I'll add it later after the recording's over, but how to do a softened startup. So a soft startup is something, once again, developed by Dr. John Gottman. And the research that he conducted shows that essentially I think it's 96 or 93% of the time, over 90% of the time, the way a conversation begins is the way it ends. Or more specifically, if you start a conversation with hostility, with aggression, with negativity, with blaming, with complaining, with anger and resentment, then the likelihood of that conversation ending well is like very, very small. But if you start the conversation with some compassion, some curiosity, some love, some humor, then the likelihood of that conversation going in a positive direction and having a good outcome is really great. And some of the things that you can do to ensure that is, one, before you have the conversation and bring up an issue with your partner, ask them when a good time to have that conversation would be. If they're outside in the middle of a project weeding the garden and you go outside and dump on them all of your relationship frustrations, that might not be an ideal time. If they're on the phone with a client, or in the middle of a project or maybe a recreational activity, and you just kind of walk up and dump on them, not a good idea. So get them at a time where they're mentally and emotionally and even physiologically prepared to have a difficult conversation. And sometimes just saying, like, heads up, I want to talk to you about something, will help kind of get them in the right frame of mind. A couple other just highlights of things to do that could be helpful in bringing something like this up would be to avoid character assassinations. So whenever you use the words you always or never, the kind of extreme language where it's all encompassing of somebody's character, those are words to avoid. You want to get really specific. You want to stick to the facts, what specifically happened, without your opinion, without your embellishments, without all of the stories that you've told yourself to fill in the blanks to make things even worse than they already were. Stick to the facts, tell them what happened, and then stick to feeling words to describe how it impacted you. The biggest mistake people make when they're using feeling words is they add the word like on the end. So when that happened, instead of saying I felt sad or I felt hurt or I felt betrayed or I felt I couldn't trust you, when you use the word like, it turns the word feeling into a thought. So I felt like you were a bad person, or I felt like you didn't care about me. There's no such feeling. You can't feel the feeling of you don't care about me. That's not an emotion. Feeling neglected is an emotion. Feeling abandoned, feeling lonely, those are emotions. But a feeling of you don't care about me is actually a thought about somebody and, in a sense, a criticism of somebody. And so if you stay away from the word like after you said I feel, and make sure that you're sticking to emotions, that will help communicate the experience. And then last, one of the best things that you can do is focus on the outcome that you want in the future. I did a whole workshop on, this is just like such a small fraction, but I did a whole workshop on restoring trust in a relationship. And it sounds like ultimately that's what this person wants in their question. Feels embarrassed and hurt. How do I put myself out there emotionally knowing I might get burned again? There's definitely a lack of connection and trust in our relationship. So if you go to thetrustworkshop.com, I go into a lot more detail on a lot of this stuff and can help walk you through some of these processes. So that's step number one. Let's see. So DK just commented, and I'll just pull this up here on the screen. She said, if I tell my husband that I have something to talk about later, when you have a minute, he would immediately get really stressed. How do you say that without giving them a lot of anxiety? So one of the things that you could say is, hey, acknowledge that it might give them some anxiety. Hey, I don't want you to stress out about this, but I want to have a chat with you about something that's been on my mind a lot lately. Just let me know when you have some time. It's an important conversation, but it's not something that I want you to stress about. Like, if you can acknowledge the elephant in the room, it can help de-escalate. And then also, it's not your job to manage your partner's anxiety. This is an important thing to remember. In our relationships, sometimes the most stressful thing that we can do to ourselves is make ourselves responsible for other people's. I'll actually show you what you're responsible for and what your partner is responsible for. We'll just go through. If you ever played the game Head, Shoulders, Knees, and Toes as a kid or sang that song, it's not a song, but it's a similar way to remember what you're responsible for. We'll start with your head. So your thoughts, and we'll get on your mouth, your words, your heart is your feelings, your stomach is your desires, and your feet are your actions. Those are the things that you are responsible for. Your own thoughts, your own words, your own feelings, your own desires, and your own actions. Now, the things that you are not responsible for is anybody else's thoughts, words, feelings, or actions. So if you show up with good intentions and you share what you need and share your experience and ask for something, and you're polite and kind, and that causes your partner anxiety, this is a skill. Like, I'm going to hammer on this a lot, and I've talked about it in the last couple of live videos that I've done. But anxiety management is the number one skill that you need to master if you want to experience any sort of intimacy and closeness in your marriage. The reason most couples don't like the intimacy and emotional connection, mental, physical, spiritual, social connection, the reason that deteriorates over time is because our ability to manage anxiety is terrible. And it's built into us. Like, we are made to be anxious creatures. And we're made that way because your brain's number one responsibility is to keep you alive. So it's constantly looking for dangers, for threats, for things that could impact you, that could hurt you. And that gives our perspective a negative bias. So just as we go through life, we tend to look for the negative things automatically. And to offset that, we have to more consciously look for things to make us happy, look for the positives in things. And one of the most important things that one of the reasons that relationships causes so much anxiety is because when you let somebody really close to you, your brain starts freaking out and going, oh my gosh, that person's closer to you than anybody's ever been before. They're so close that they could hurt you worse than anybody has ever hurt you before. What are you doing? Taking your armor off around them, your metaphorical armor. Like, if you tell them about your weaknesses or your worries or your fears, they can use those against you. And because our anxiety skyrockets through the roof without us even thinking about it, because we've let the person that we love get close to us, our instincts are to push them away, to do something to keep them at arm's distance, to keep ourselves safe. And there's a lot of different strategies that we use. I'm going to do an entire anxiety series on this channel in the coming weeks and months. But that anxiety is something that we all need to learn to manage in order to have a great relationship. And if your partner gets anxious because you want to have a conversation about how to make your relationship better, it's up to your partner to manage that anxiety. I hope that helps, DK. So once you've brought up the issue or you had a soft startup and you have a conversation about what your partner did, it's important that, I think, in this situation that that you also feel understood, that this conversation allows you to have the experience of your partner getting the impact that they had on you. Like, you're not going to heal until I think your partner truly, I think the word is groks. Let me just Google it right now. What does grok mean? I heard this. Grok means to understand something intuitively by empathy. So yeah, you want your partner to grok you. You want them to like really get the impact that their words or actions had on your life. And that's going to be a really healing thing for you. So that's one thing that you're going to want to do if you want to restore trust, is get to that place. Now, that experience of your partner getting you doesn't necessarily lead to forgiveness. That's just part of a process. In order to forgive somebody, that's a conscious choice. In order to forgive somebody, I mean, it's up to you when you forgive somebody, but typically after you've seen some evidence that maybe they understood what they did and that they don't plan to do that again, the choice of forgiving them is is not connected to whether or not you still feel hurt by that experience. Forgiveness is a choice to not hold that experience over your partner's head anymore. You're not gonna punish them for it. You're not 2 weeks down the road gonna be like, well, you remember that time that you did this or said that thing? Like it's off the table. When you forgive somebody, it doesn't mean that necessarily you feel emotionally whole again. It just means that you're not going to continue to punish or drag your partner, hold them accountable for something that they've done in the past. And then you get to wrestle with the emotions because you're responsible for your feelings of working towards letting that go over time. So that's some of what you want to talk about. Another thing that to really consider if your partner is saying stuff behind your back is this is hard, but when somebody gossips behind your back, it's a reflection that they don't have a lot of respect for you. There's a lack of respect for the relationship and a lack of respect for you. And in some cases, not in all cases, but in some cases, this is because we don't have a whole lot of respect for ourselves. We allow ourselves to be trampled emotionally inside of our relationships. We allow ourselves to be taken advantage of, to be manipulated. We allow ourselves to be a doormat. We say yes to everything, even things that we don't want to say yes to. I'm a people pleaser, recovering people pleaser, and people pleasers don't always have a lot of self-respect. It's really difficult for them to say no. And one of the invitations that I would have for you, if you're in a situation like this where you have a partner who's being disrespectful and it seems like they don't have a whole lot of respect for you as a person, is to get clear. What are some ways that you can start to show yourself some respect and then demand that respect from your partner as well? So get clear on what are the behaviors that you will not tolerate. What are the red flags that are deal breakers for you? How will you enforce those? What is it? How are you going to stand up for yourself in the moments where you are disrespected? Are you going to remain quiet and just let it fly under the rug? Are you going to speak up? And if you speak up, what are you going to say? How are you going to stand up for yourself? How are you going to let your partner know that this is not okay and that there are consequences when they take advantage of your trust or hurt you in specific ways that are really kind of cruel and malevolent? And getting clear on what that looks like for you to develop that self-respect and then being willing to stand up to your partner. I think one of the big fears that we have and why we tolerate a lot of garbage from our partner and misbehavior is because we're afraid that we will lose the relationship. There's this, we invest so much time and energy and attention and love and care into our relationships over time that if they start to go sour or those roots start to die that I talked about at the beginning of the relationship, and we aren't able to kind of resurrect them and heal them, we worry that all of that work and effort was for naught and that we will never find anything better in the future. And I'm here to say that, one, it's definitely possible to save those roots in most cases and to save the tree, to save the relationship. And it's also overcomable if that relationship ends. And I think a lot of people tolerate too much negativity over time. When you have a partner who thrives on taking advantage of you and taking advantage of your trust and your goodness, and it's something that they do regularly without remorse, you deserve better. That's not what a marriage is. That's not a relationship. If you're in a position like that, that is not a relationship. It's definitely not a healthy one. And if you want a healthy and strong relationship, you need to start by addressing the roots of that tree. If you want some really clear instructions on how to rebuild trust in your relationship, like again, I've got the Trust Workshop. You can go to thetrustworkshop.com and get some resources. You can come over to the Epic Marriage Club at epicmarriageclub.com, and I'm constantly providing the members of the Epic Marriage Club with resources and tools to reestablish trust in their relationship, as well as learning how to like their partner more and learning how to get to know their partner more, making sure those three roots are strong, in addition to a lot of other stuff, including anxiety management, which we talked a lot about on this specific call. So Man, this is a hard situation to be in. It's probably awkward and tenuous and stressful, but I'm confident that as if you have a, how do I put this? This is probably the best way to crystallize this. If you have a partner who cares about your relationship and who wants to be trusted, who wants to feel known, who wants to be liked, and who wants to like you and know you and trust you, if you have a partner who meets those criteria, this conversation will probably go pretty well. If you approach it appropriately, my guess is that your partner will hear you. It might take a couple of tries. It might be hard if you're not used to having conversations like this. It's easy to get defensive and for the conversation to escalate. You might have to come back and try a couple of times. But eventually, like if you have a partner who has a good heart, they're going to want to hear and work through this stuff. If your partner is maybe more selfish, self-absorbed, who's a taker, who's in the relationship to get as much as he can to bleed you dry of your compassion and your goodness, and to take advantage of all of the beautiful things that you bring to the relationship without contributing back and without really caring about who you are and what you're trying to create. If their vision of the relationship is one-sided and it's what can I get out of this, then the conversation is not going to go well. And that's going to tell you a lot about the future of your relationship. And so, yeah, I would just invite you to have those conversations, to let your partner know how you've been hurt, to set up some rules of engagement, to develop some self-respect, to maybe both of you work on managing your anxiety a little bit, and to go through the steps in the trust workshop. And I think that would be a really big help for you guys. These are difficult and painful things to go through. And the great thing about them, once again, the human growth machine, is that if you can successfully overcome this, it becomes yet another thing that you've overcome together. And it contributes to this story that everything in your marriage is overcomable, that the two of you can outgrow any problem that comes your way. And there's power in that. There is power in mutually outgrowing your problems. There is like something really exciting about that. And if you can overcome this problem, it's going to just add to the depth and the flavor and the beauty of the relationship that you have right now, and give you more confidence for when you approach trials down the road. When couples give up too easily on their problems and they don't look to outgrow them, they never get that experience of having the type of relationship that I would call like an epic marriage, the type of marriage that is better than 99% of the marriages out there. You know, those marriages, the top 1% of marriages, those are the marriages that are continuously improving, continuously looking to grow and outgrow their problems. And as they do so, they just get affirmation after affirmation after affirmation that their love is true, their love is strong, that nothing can come between them, and they feel a closeness and a bond that very few couples get to experience in their lifetime. So I hope that gives you a little bit of context and a little bit of help. I know this is not an easy problem to deal with, but I'm confident that if you approach it with the right heart and the right mindset, and you have a partner who loves you, that this is definitely something that's navigatable. And if you need help, you know where to find me. Epic Marriage Club is a great place to start, or you can shoot me an email and I can let you know what other options there are available to get more help and support on issues like this. And just want to encourage you to hit the subscribe button if this was helpful. And I've got another video coming out tomorrow that is all about how to accept an apology from your partner. We talked a little bit about it today, but we'll get more into it tomorrow.